Your favorite Helldivers 2 YouTuber is back, said no one ever, to bless you with another Helldivers 2 Ultimate Enemy tier list. This tier list being for the Illuminates. Now, there's nothing ultimate about this tier list because there aren't many enemies for the Illuminates as of right now. But I think this video is a great opportunity to compare the stats and the enemies as of right now to what they might be in the future. Now, as I typically mention, these tier lists are strictly opinion based, but hopefully the tier list is mostly agreeable. I'd also love to hear your guys' thoughts in the comments, whether you agree or disagree, and if you guys would like me to try out something new for the tier lists or just content in general, let me know down below in the comments. But anyways, let's get started. Also, for today's video, I will be using a 3-category format instead of my typical 4-category format for today's tier list, just because there aren't enough enemies yet to proceed with a 4-category format. Starting with, of course, the most common enemy type, the Voteless. The most common and most satisfying, because whipping out a machine gun the old-fashioned way and letting all hell break loose is one of the most satisfying ways to dispose of the Voteless, as well as training them as if it's Black Ops 1 zombies. Now, according to the lore, and I haven't gotten a chance to read up on Helldivers 2 lore thoroughly, but I promise I will give the lore a chance in some near future. The Voteless are former loyal citizens of Super Earth, warped by Illuminate experimentation into mindless soldiers for their despotic regime. This brief description might indicate that they are just zombies, but they could just be infected citizens of Super Earth. Either way, they do display zombie-like characteristics. Their only way of attacking being swiping, clawing, maybe even punching you within melee range. Now, of course, they don't do much damage with these attacks because they're light infantry. However, there are 3 different classes of Voteless. There are light, medium, and heavy Voteless, each of which have a very insignificant difference. The only difference being that the heavy Voteless have slightly more health than the medium and light variants. Now, as great as the machine guns can be for disposing of the Voteless, I have been finding that electric weapons, specifically the arc thrower and the Tesla tower, are insanely effective for the Illuminate hordes, especially if you're wearing the electric arc armor. You can grab a Tesla tower, just crouch right next to it, and let all the hordes come towards you, while you and your Tesla tower are just raining electric hell down onto them. Now, overall, of course, the Voteless have to go into the easy category. They're just the easiest enemy to kill. There's never really a time where you die to the Voteless unless you get overwhelmed by multiple hordes of them. Which brings us to our horde spawner. The Watcher, the Party Light, the Dorito. I need to come up with more goofy names, honestly. The Watcher's main purpose is to call in the warp ships after it's detected a threat, aka us Helldivers. Now, the warp ships are responsible for bringing in hordes of reinforcements, and after that the Watcher will become a pest that infinitely shoots lightning arcs at us until stunned or destroyed. Now, the Watcher doesn't have much health, which means you should be able to dispose of it quickly. The problem is when you have hordes of Voteless with the inclusion of Overseers, the Watchers will continuously spawn in reinforcements once you've disposed of the majority of the enemies. Taking down the Watchers is usually of top priority, but I myself enjoy going for kills on Illuminates, so I don't mind keeping them around. Overall, the Watchers are definitely worthy of the annoying category. Next up are the Overseers, starting with the elevated Overseers. If you've ever attempted deathless streaks, which I typically do when I stream at 5 p.m. to 8 p.m. Eastern time zone, you'll soon realize that the elevated Overseers, at least in my experience, tend to cause the most pain and suffering, especially when there are squadrons of them sidestepping and swaying around, causing you to miss shots on them, as well as them constantly tossing grenades at you. Not only that, but their burst firing inflicts quite an amount of damage, especially when you have a squadron of them constantly firing at you. It occasionally feels like there isn't enough time to retaliate, since there is more than likely a Voteless horde coming towards you, while the elevated overseers are being a nuisance. Now, these overseers are equipped with mostly light armor, but are a little tanky. You will be able to penetrate them with the majority, if not all the weapons in the game, but like I mentioned earlier, I am particularly fond of the arc thrower because you can just stun lock them while having max penetration and dispose of them in a peaceful manner. Overall, the elevated overseers are going straight into the death category. I think Arrowhead should consider slightly lowering the amounts of overseers that can be present at once, because more than 5 of them, especially in a solo, can get pretty overwhelming with everything else you have to deal with. Moving on to the ground overseers. Now, these guys are more manageable since they usually make their presence known by shooting energy projectiles at you through their staff, as well as them infinitely meleeing objects from time to time, which I'm sure isn't intentional. But what definitely seems to be intentional is the stun lock you receive from being striked by their staff, because a good 90% of the time you end up dying to them is because once they land a successful melee attack on you, it leads to stun lock, making their next attack guarantee death. Now, both of the overseers are a little inconsistent, specifically the damage you have to deal to kill them, because sometimes they can take half a mag or a full mag to dispose of, which I'm assuming has to do with the specific armor type they use, as well as the damage they deal to you. Sometimes I'll wear light armor and tank a swing from their staff with minor damage while being able to walk away and stim. Meanwhile, the very next game I could bring heavy armor and get critically injured, losing a limb while having a slight possibility of being able to stem before bleeding out. Now, you can easily bypass this by meleeing the overseers before they're able to land a strike on you. Peak physique isn't a requirement. Overall, I'm going to be placing them in the annoying category, but even if preventing their attack wasn't possible, I'm certain I'd still place them in the same category, since they are almost never in close proximity to you when they have been alerted to your presence, and their energy projectiles are extremely easy to dodge. Next up is the arc pole, or should I say the Illuminate Tesla towers. What's interesting about them is that it seems the Illuminate have manufactured them using impeccable technology, because their Tesla towers are able to ignore their troops and only attack us. We'll need to steal that technology quickly and perhaps turn it into a ship module upgrade for our own Tesla towers. Now, I'm aware that the Tesla towers immediately kill you if you go within a 20-meter range of them, but what I didn't know is that according to a Discord user I found while scavenging for additional information, the Tesla towers can apparently one-tap you through the mechs as well, which is a little insane if that is correct. When it comes to playing Illuminates, especially missions like Free Colony, aka Raise Super Flag, you need to make sure to watch for these arc poles because they are not messing around. Which is another reason I like retaliating with electrical equipment, especially our own Tesla towers, because our Tesla towers deal significantly more damage to them than their Tesla towers deal to us. I know this because using the electric armor, I've found that their Tesla towers inflict less damage than ours do. And just the thought of us getting our hands on that technology and adding it to our own, I can only imagine what the gameplay would look like. Everyone throwing down a Tesla tower right next to each other, an infinite amount of kills. Or maybe future implementation like a device that lets us take over their systems and use their own Tesla towers against them. Now, I think that'd be a little too extreme. Arrowhead would not allow that. Now, the Tesla towers can be destroyed with anything explosive, so it's not too big of a deal, especially if you're bringing crossbow or grenade pistol. But the Illuminate Tesla tower or the arc pole is going straight into the death category, because you need to shift your top priority to destroying these Tesla towers, since they will result in an instant kill if you don't, and there are quite a decent amount of them placed throughout the entirety of the maps, especially the Free Colony missions. Don't get me started on the monoliths. Next enemy is one that probably none of you had an iota of a thought would be appearing on the tier list. and that would be the high explosive barrels. And no, I did not just add them so I could have more enemies on the list. I added them because occasionally I'll have times where overseers or perhaps a harvester end up blasting the barrels next to me, resulting in my death. And let me just say that these are no ordinary barrels. These barrels came straight from the depths of hell because they have what seems to be 500 kilogram bomb range, especially if they are stacked up on each other. Not only that, but these barrels are placed everywhere on the map, and with all of the Voteless hordes and overseer spam, you sometimes don't have enough time to see when you're running into a death pit full of barrels. These barrels once lost me an Illuminate deathless streak, which is probably another reason I'm adding them on the list. However, if you are ahead of the Illuminate hordes, you can of course use the barrels to your advantage with the insane range of destruction they provide and dispose of the entirety of the horde. That's pretty much it. Other than that, I will be placing the barrels at the very end of the annoying category. Next up is the warp ship, or should I say warp ships, because once a watcher calls in for reinforcements, at least a good 3 or more of these will spawn in, bringing a horde of Voteless and a ton of overseers, including a few harvesters. Upon landing on an Illuminate inhabited planet, it's best you look around for SAM sites to activate, especially when soloing missions, because it's imperative that you get them activated as soon as possible, or else you're going to have to deal with who knows how many Illuminate enemies, especially since you'll be dealing with multiple watchers who will inevitably get the chance to snitch on you and alert the warp ships to your location. Now, I'm pretty sure the warp ships are fitted with tank armor all around, but similar to the thrusters of the automaton dropships, using the recoilless rifle and probably the expendable, a single 85mm shell aimed at the flat circular underside will instantly destroy a warp ship, and if any spear lovers are out there, the weapon is capable of destroying a warp ship with a single missile. But honestly, just scratch everything I just said, because you can let the warp ships bring in the reinforcements. Whip out your destructive stratagems and acquire a ton of kills, which I think is significantly more satisfying and one of the primary playstyles I use for the Illuminates. As for the grounded warp ships that serve as encampments, you'll need something with a quick rate of fire to break their shield and a reliable ready-to-use weapon such as a crossbow or grenade pistol to quickly dispose of the ships before they infinitely release Voteless for you to kill repeatedly. Overall, the warp ships are going straight to the top of the annoying category. As of right now, I don't think they are worthy of the death category just yet, but the future enemy's arrowhead release for the Illuminates might be able to change my mind. Last but not least, the Harvester, aka the tripod. I've been seeing posts and discussions of the harvesters being difficult to face, when actually the people creating these discussions don't know how to effectively dispose of them. Now, I typically run the MG43 on Illuminates, a good middle ground between the other two, and it's important to aim at the vital body parts of the harvester, because as soon as they lose a leg, they give up. Don't aim at the head as you would in a typical situation when killing an enemy, but instead focus on body parts like the joints of the harvester, because inflicting much more damage to a specific body part and destroying it will affect the enemy's overall health pool significantly. And if you have better aim than I do, you can probably kill a good 3 harvesters with a single mag. Now, the harvesters are mostly made up of heavy/medium armor, but all you really need is medium armor penetrating to dispose of them. However, their death ray has no limitations, because more than half a second's worth of it penetrating you with whatever armor type you have equipped will send you straight back into a hell pod, though you are able to tell when a harvester is about to execute execute a death ray attack, so it's pretty easy to avoid being incinerated by them, as well as their electric arc shots, which you can easily bypass if you are using the electric armor. Their shield is pretty weak. You don't need a high damage automatic weapon to temporarily destroy their shields, but if you're bringing the MG, then that doesn't matter. You can as well destroy their shield generators entirely by destroying either of their prongs located above and below the harvester's eye, and you can easily dispose of the tripods with weapons like the recoilless rifle, expendable anti-tank, the commando. Even the anti-material rifle can take out a harvester with a couple shots. Overall, seeing as the tripod is the big boy enemy of the Illuminates until they release the rest of the remaining enemies for the faction, I'm going to give it a little bit of courtesy and place it near the top of the annoying category. Also, since we have the occasional game where you get aimbotted by their death ray with everything else you have to pay attention to, they are honestly comparable to an automaton Hulk or Terminated Charger, but I'm sure when the tier 2 tripods come out, they're going to be quite a devastating opponent to face. And that's it for the Helldivers 2 Ultimate Illuminates enemy tier list. Let me know what you guys thought of this tier list down below in the comments. Consider sticking around if you liked this video. Thank you all for watching. I stream occasionally at 5 p.m. to 8 p.m. Eastern time zone on YouTube if anyone's interested in deathless streaks. And until the next video, goodbye.